This is by far the most difficult, not comprehensive review I've done from a personal level. This is the film Stuart, A Life Backwards, and it's difficult because I knew Stuart. Um, in my younger days as a teenager, I came across Stuart twice. I suppose there were two sort of chapters, I suppose, of knowing Stuart in my life. The first was age, I guess, sort of 16, 17, 18, something like that. I was a very wayward teenager, and there was a time in my teens where I was living in a squat in Cambridge and getting up to all kinds of shenanigans. And I met Stuart then and liked him a lot, actually. He was homeless at the time, living on the streets in Cambridge, and but he seemed like a good dude. There were a lot of people that were, wayward and out of place in that time, and a lot of them had demons that seemed uncontrollable, and he was one of them. But he was one of them where his demons, although they were uncontrollable, never seemed to override his sense of goodness in some way. He always seemed somebody likable. And then a couple of years later, I was dating this girl. She got kicked out of her family home. She came to live in my family home with my parents and me. And then both of us got kicked out because we were wayward little fucks. And we ended up getting some temporary accommodation in Waterbeach. And we saw Stuart there again. And I'd known him from those days previously in the squat. I was glad to see him, and we would play pool together. And his thing at the time was dumplings. He was very keen on dumplings for whatever reason. So he made his dumplings, and he was very proud of that. And it seemed like he was on a decent trajectory at the time, to the degree that he was. It's a long way round to say that this film. It's a heartbreaking film. What he went through. I didn't know most of it. This film, Tom Hardy plays Stuart, and Benedict Cumberbatch plays this guy. Yeah, I didn't know anything about the character that he plays at the time, but he's the guy that wrote a book about him apparently. And I think by all accounts they met in about 2000, so perhaps just after I met him, or around about the same time. But then the sort of story picks up from there, from that regard. But there's a bit in the film where, which I remember very vividly, and it's like fucking, it made me cry a little bit. Faye and I had come back from Cambridge. We were living in, as I said, in this temporary accommodation in Waterbeach, and there were helicopters, like with searchlights and stuff outside the flats, and police cars surrounding the place. It was a whole thing that was going on, and we learned the next day that it was Stuart, and he barricaded himself into the flats and taped a knife to his wrist and stuff. He had demons, man. He had real demons, and he used to talk about the things that he went through. But he went through so much, and a lot of this is talked about in the film. Sorry, it's not the most articulate one of these I've ever done. It's just really difficult because it's someone that's personal. It was difficult to watch because so many of us from those days didn't make it. I'm one of the lucky ones, and out there who you are that are in this social circle, that are on my friends group, the lucky ones that got out of that and made something of themselves. But there were a lot of us that were fallen, and he was one of them. He was one of them, and he was on a losing wicket from day one, man. Some of the things that he went through were worse than you could ever fucking wish on your worst enemy. So he had it worse. He had it worse than any of us could imagine. And those of us that didn't have that perhaps had more of a chance. And so I feel very grateful that I was one of the ones that got out and made something themselves. Stuart never did. But look, if you come from that scene, I highly recommend this film. If you don't come from this scene, I still highly recommend this film, just because it's a really powerful film about a guy who had all of the disadvantages that you can possibly imagine in life and wasn't an angel by any stretch. He's very candid about the violence and in fact talks about the fact that that's one of the things that he wishes he'd never been introduced to. But when you know his story, you understand the violence and where it comes from and what led into it. And I really recommend that you watch it. I'm normally trying to be sort of charismatic and bouncy in these videos, and I can't in this. I just can't. I wish I'd watched this when it came out. I couldn't at the time. It came out, I think, in about 2008. But thank you to Tom Lennox, because he reminded me of it the other day, and I thought, you know what, this is about time I did watch this, and I'm fucking glad I did.